The human ship drifted silently through the far edge of the Virellian system. Captain Daniel Ross stood on the deck, scanning the dark void beyond the glass. He had been hired for a simple cargo run, no risks, no trouble. At least, that was what the contract said. But the moment his ship crossed into the alien sector, his gut told him something was wrong. The comms crackled with strange signals, and faint energy bursts appeared on the radar. They were not alone. A sudden flash tore through the blackness, and an alien warship burst from hyperspace. The Virellians were known for keeping outsiders away from their core worlds. Daniel knew this could only mean trouble. His co-pilot Mara tried to open a channel, but before she could speak, the alien ship fired warning shots across their bow. The entire vessel shook under the force. This was no casual patrol. This was a demand to stop. Daniel ordered the ship to hold position. A transmission finally came through. The alien voice was deep and firm, translated into the human tongue. You have crossed into protected space. Stand down and prepare to be boarded. The message cut off, leaving no room for negotiation. Daniel glanced at Mara. They're not here for cargo, he said quietly. Something else is going on. The warship's boarding clamps locked onto his freighter, and within seconds, the airlock opened. A squad of armored alien guards stepped inside, weapons raised. They moved with precision, their green skin marked with faint glowing tattoos. At the front stood a tall figure with an air of authority. Her eyes locked on Daniel, studying him like a puzzle she had already decided how to solve. She introduced herself as Commander Thalira of the Virellian Guard. Without any small talk, she ordered her soldiers to secure the ship and take Daniel to their flagship. Mara tried to protest, but the guards ignored her. Daniel was escorted into a sleek alien transport and taken to a colossal battleship that hung in orbit above a green and gold world. Its surface shimmered like a jewel, surrounded by vast defense platforms. As they landed in the docking bay, he noticed rows of alien warriors lined up in silent formation. This was not a simple arrest, it felt like a ceremonial display. He was marched through grand metallic corridors, the air filled with the hum of strange energy fields. Every alien who saw him gave the same curious look, as if trying to measure him. Finally, the guards brought him into a vast hall. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Pillars carved with swirling patterns, walls lined with flowing banners, and a throne of silver stone at the far end. Sitting upon it was a towering figure, clearly of royal blood. Her armor was ornate, her crown embedded with glowing gems, and her expression calm but calculating. Daniel quickly realized she was not just royalty, she was the Virellian High Matriarch. And standing beside her were two young alien women, both strikingly beautiful, their features softer but no less regal. The High Matriarch studied him in silence before speaking. "You have touched my daughters." The words hung in the air like a blade. Daniel frowned, confused. "I've never seen them before," he said honestly. But the matriarch's voice grew sharper. "By our laws, contact between an outsider and royal daughters, intentional or not, binds them to marriage. It is written in our oldest codes." The two daughters exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Daniel felt heat rise in his chest. "There must be a mistake," he said. "I don't even know your customs." The matriarch's gaze did not soften. "Custom or not, the law is absolute. You will be wed to them both to preserve honor and stability." Daniel's mind raced. This was insane. One minute he was hauling cargo, the next he was being told he would marry two alien princesses. He glanced at the daughters again. One had emerald eyes and deep red hair that shimmered in the light. The other had violet eyes and flowing blue hair streaked with silver. Their armor was ceremonial, but their posture hinted at warriors trained for battle. They were beautiful, yes, but also dangerous. Daniel took a slow breath. "And if I refuse?" The matriarch's lips curved into a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Then you will face trial for dishonoring my bloodline. The punishment is death." The hall fell silent. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons. The daughters watched him closely, as if measuring his reaction. Daniel's heart pounded. He was trapped in a world whose rules made no sense. To him, standing before a ruler who seemed ready to either crown him or kill him. And deep down, he knew one thing. This was no accident. Someone had planned this from the start. Daniel stood in the great hall, the weight of the matriarchs. Words pressing down on him. The alien guards didn't move, their glowing eyes fixed on him like predators waiting for a signal to strike. He could feel the daughters' stares as well, one curious, one sharp, both watching his every breath. He was a stranger in their world, bound by a law he didn't understand. Yet deep down, a small part of him knew that refusing outright might end his life within the hour. "I need to know how this happened," Daniel said finally, his voice steady despite the tightness in his chest. The matriarch's gaze didn't waver. 3 days ago, during the skirmish near our outer colonies, your ship drifted close to a damaged escape pod. My daughters were inside. You opened the hatch with your own hands and pulled them out. That act, your hands touching theirs, completed the sacred contact. Daniel's mind flashed back. He remembered a distress beacon, a sealed pod, 2 figures unconscious inside. He had acted without thinking, just trying to save lives. That wasn't a marriage proposal, Daniel said, his voice edged with frustration. The matriarch's tone was calm, almost cold. "On your world, perhaps. On mine, it binds souls. My people believe such a connection cannot be undone." The daughters exchanged glances again. The red-haired one stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "You risked your life for ours. Our people honor that in the only way they know, by making you one of us." Her sister, the blue-haired princess, added softly, "It is not only law, it is protection." The last word lingered, hinting at something unspoken. Daniel studied them both. There was no fear in their eyes, no reluctance. But there was something else, a quiet urgency, as if this marriage was not just ceremony, but necessity. He turned his attention back to the matriarch. "If I accept, what happens then?" Her answer was immediate. "You will live under our banner. You will share their lives, their duties, their burdens. You will be given the rights of a royal consort, but also the responsibilities. You will not leave without permission. You will stand with them in matters of war and peace." The words felt like both an honor and a cage. Mara's voice suddenly echoed through the hall from behind the guards. She had somehow slipped past the outer security. "Daniel, you can't agree to this. We have a contract. We have a life back on Earth." The guards moved to restrain her, but the matriarch raised a hand to halt them. Her expression sharpened as she looked at Mara. "This is not your concern, human woman. Leave or remain as a guest until the bond is complete." Daniel saw the fear in Mara's eyes, and the silent plea for him not to vanish into this alien world forever. But Daniel also saw the other truth. These people were not negotiating. They had already decided his fate. The daughters stood close now, their presence almost magnetic. The red-haired princess met his eyes and spoke in a voice only he could hear. "If you walk away, you will be hunted. Accept, and you might yet survive what is coming." Her words stirred a chill through him. Survive what is coming. That meant there was more at play here than marriage. Something darker. Something that even she feared. The matriarch rose from her throne. "Decide, human. Will you honor the law or defy it?" Her voice carried through the hall like a wave. Daniel looked from her to the daughters, then to Mara, then back again. He had no clear path, only a choice between immediate danger and unknown chains. Slowly, he nodded. "I will honor the law." The hall erupted in ceremonial chants, deep voices echoing against the stone walls. The matriarch's expression softened slightly. But her eyes still held that unreadable calculation. "You will be prepared for the bonding ceremony," she said. Guards moved forward to escort him away, but the blue-haired princess stepped into his path. "Before the ceremony, I must speak to you alone." The matriarch hesitated for a moment, then nodded her approval. Daniel followed the princess through winding corridors lit by soft green light until they reached a private chamber. The walls were lined with intricate carvings of battles, alliances, and old treaties. She turned to face him, her voice low. "You do not understand the danger you are in. This law, it is only the surface of the truth." Daniel frowned. "Then tell me the rest." She glanced at the door to be sure they were alone. "There is a faction within our empire that wants war with your people. By binding you to us, my mother hopes to stop them. But if they see you as weak, they will kill you and us with you." Daniel's pulse quickened. "So this marriage isn't about honor, it's about politics." She gave a small nod. "And survival. For all. 3 of us." Daniel leaned against the carved wall, the weight of her words sinking in. This wasn't just his problem anymore. Whatever game the matriarch was playing, he was now a piece on the board. And the other players were already moving. The princess's words stayed in Daniel's mind long after she left him alone in the chamber. He sat on the edge of a carved stone bench, staring at the floor. Politics, war, assassins. This marriage was not a gift, it was a shield, and he was the one expected to hold it. But if what she said was true, the moment he failed, the shield would shatter, and they would all be swept away in the coming storm. A knock at the door broke his thoughts. It was the red-haired princess this time. She entered with a guarded expression, though her voice was calm. "You don't know me yet, but you should. I am Kaelen, first daughter of the matriarch. My sister is Seris. We were raised in the ways of war and statcraft. If you are to survive here, you must learn fast." Daniel nodded, trying to gauge whether she was a friend or simply another player in this dangerous game. "Then teach me," he said quietly. She gave a faint smile. "Good, we begin now." Kaelen led him into a smaller training hall where the air smelled faintly of metal and burning energy. Alien weapons lined the walls sleek, deadly designs unlike anything from Earth. She handed him a long curved blade that pulsed faintly with a blue light. "This is a Zalin. It bonds to your grip. Lose it, and it will vanish before your enemy can use it against you." Daniel felt the weapon hum in his hand, almost alive. She showed him the basic stances, the way to hold his weight, the quick movements to parry and strike. His arms ached within minutes, but he didn't stop. Halfway through the training, Seris appeared at the doorway, watching silently. She was different from her sister, quieter, more calculating. When Kaelen left to retrieve something from the armory, Seris stepped forward. "You learn quickly, that is good. But skill will not save you if you cannot read the court." Daniel wiped sweat from his forehead. "And how do I do that?" Her lips curved slightly. "Watch what is not said. The smiles that hide the knives. The allies who never stand too close." Her tone was calm, but her eyes held a flicker of warning. Before Daniel could ask more, a deep chime echoed through the hall. The sound was not ceremonial, it carried urgency. Guards rushed in, speaking rapidly in their language. Kaelen returned, her expression sharp. "There has been an attack," she said. "A faction ship breached the outer defense ring. They are testing our response time." Seris turned to Daniel. "This is no accident. They want to see if the human consort can be rattled before the bond is sealed." The words hit him hard. He was already being used as bait. They moved quickly through the palace, escorted by heavily armed guards. From a high balcony, Daniel could see the distant flashes of battle in orbit, a dance of fire and shadow. Alien defense ships were engaging the attackers, weaving through beams of light. The matriarch stood there, her posture unshaken, as if the chaos outside were a minor inconvenience. She glanced at Daniel briefly. "You see now why this union matters. There are those who believe your kind is weak. I intend to prove them wrong." Daniel stepped forward, choosing his words carefully. "If you want to prove them wrong, then let me fight." The matriarch studied him for a moment before answering. "In time. For now you will watch, learn, and survive." She turned away, issuing sharp commands to her captains. The daughters remained by his side, their gazes fixed on the battle. Daniel could feel the tension in them, not fear, but readiness, like predators waiting for the right moment to strike. The fight in orbit ended quickly. The attackers withdrew, leaving only wreckage behind. But the message was clear. They were probing, testing, looking for a weakness. That night, Daniel was escorted back to his quarters. The palace felt different now. The air was heavier, the shadows longer. He caught glimpses of whispered conversations in corridors, eyes following him from behind carved pillars. He was no longer just a stranger. He was a piece of the Empire's future, and not everyone welcomed that. When he finally lay down, sleep did not come easily. His mind kept replaying the battle, the Matriarch's words, and the sisters' warnings. Somewhere out there, enemies were planning their next move. And here, inside the palace, others were watching for him to make the wrong one. The law might have bound him to the princesses, but real trust, would be much harder to win. Morning came with a sharp knock. A guard entered, bowing slightly. "Your presence is required in the Grand Council chamber." Daniel followed him through the winding halls until they emerged into a vast circular room. The Matriarch sat at the head of a great table, flanked by high-ranking officials, military leaders, and advisors. The daughters were seated beside her. Every alien in the room turned to watch as Daniel entered. The matriarch gestured to an empty seat next to her. "Today," she said, "you will speak as one of us. You will learn the shape of our alliances and the weight of our enemies, and you will understand why one touch has bound you to our fate." Daniel took the seat, his eyes scanning the faces around him. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with suspicion, a few with open hostility. Whatever this council was about, he knew one thing: it was going to decide more than just his marriage. It was going to decide his place in this world, and whether he would live long enough to see the end of it. Asterisk. The council chamber was a ring of cold steel and polished stone. Voices murmured in the alien tongue as Daniel sat beside the matriarch, feeling the weight of every gaze in the room. The daughters sat on either side of him, their presence a silent shield. The matriarch lifted her hand, and the murmurs fell into silence. "We face an enemy who believes our law makes us weak," she began. "They believe bringing a human into our bloodline is a mistake. Today, we will prove them wrong." One of the counselors, an older alien with silver marks on his forehead, leaned forward. His eyes locked on Daniel. "With respect, High Matriarch, why trust an outsider to stand in our councils? His loyalty is untested." The words stirred murmurs from several others. Daniel felt the tension in the air and chose his response carefully. "You don't have to trust me yet," he said. "But I didn't come here to betray anyone. Your daughters' lives were in danger, and I acted. I didn't ask for this law, but I will not run from it either." His words brought a pause too. The whispers. The matriarch studied him, then nodded slightly. "You will have the chance to show your worth." She gestured to a holographic projection in the center of the table. A map of star systems unfolded, red markers pulsing like angry wounds. "These are the strongholds of the faction that attacked yesterday. They are well armed, and their leaders want war." Kaelen's eyes narrowed. "And they will not stop until they see blood." Seris added quietly, "or until they are shown something they fear more." The discussion that followed was a clash of strategies: defense lines, supply routes, covert operations. Daniel listened carefully, realizing this was more than military planning. Every proposal was also a play for power within the council. All eyes were weighing their influence against rivals, and every word had a hidden meaning. By the end of the session, the matriarch rose and declared the council adjourned. But before anyone left, she spoke again. "Tomorrow, the bonding ceremony will take place. The law will be fulfilled." Daniel followed the daughters out into the palace corridors. Kaelen spoke first, her voice firm. "The ceremony will make you a target. Once it is complete, they will test you in ways you cannot imagine." Seris glanced over her shoulder to be sure no one followed. "They will try to humiliate you, to make you look weak. If they succeed, they will use it as proof that our mother's choice was a mistake." Daniel kept walking, his mind working through the warning. "Then I can't afford to give them that chance." That evening, preparations filled the palace. Servants carried silver trays of ceremonial armor, each piece engraved with ancient patterns. Alien musicians tuned strange shimmering instruments. The air smelled faintly of rare incense. Daniel was taken to a large chamber where two attendants began fitting him into his ceremonial armor. It was lighter than it looked, made from a flexible alloy that hugged his form. The chestplate bore a symbol he had seen before, the crest of the royal house. When he asked what it meant, one of the attendants replied simply, "It means you are one of them now." Later, Kaelen and Seris entered, dressed in their own ceremonial armor. The designs were intricate, their colors deep and vibrant under the soft light. Kaelen's expression was steady, almost protective. Ceris's was thoughtful, her gaze searching Daniel's face. "Once the ceremony begins, there is no turning back," Seris said. "Are you ready for that?" Daniel met her eyes. "I wasn't ready for any of this, but I'm still here." Kaelen gave a small approving nod before they could say more. A deep, resonant chime echoed through the palace. A guard entered. "High Matriarch requests your presence in the Hall of the Stars." The three of them walked together, their footsteps in unison. The hall was vast, its ceiling a dome of transparent crystal that opened to the night sky. Thousands of alien citizens filled the tiers above, their eyes fixed on the center where the matriarch stood. She raised her arms, and the hall fell silent. "By the oldest of our laws, and in the sight of our people, the bond shall be sealed." Daniel stepped forward with Kaelen and Seris at his side. The matriarch's voice carried through the chamber as she recited the ancient vows. Each word was unfamiliar, yet heavy with meaning. Daniel repeated them as instructed, his voice steady. The daughters did the same, their tones clear and unwavering. When the final words were spoken, a golden light descended from the dome, bathing the three of them in a warm glow. The crowd let out a unified chant, the sound deep enough to vibrate in Daniel's bones. The light faded, and the matriarch stepped forward. "It is done. From this day, he is one of us." As the crowd roared in approval, or at least in acceptance, Daniel caught sight of movement in the far balcony. A shadow slipped away, almost unnoticed. Kaelen's gaze flicked toward it as well, her eyes narrowing. She leaned toward Daniel and whispered just loud enough for him to hear. "They were watching, and they will strike soon." The roar of the crowd was still echoing when the golden light faded from the Hall of the Stars. Daniel stood between Kaelen and Seris, the ceremonial armor heavy on his shoulders, his pulse still racing. The matriarch gave the formal dismissal, and the audience began to leave in orderly lines. But the sense of unease in Daniel's chest only grew stronger. Kaelen's earlier whisper repeated in his mind, "They will strike soon." The sisters stayed close to him as they walked back toward the inner halls of the palace. The air felt different now, charged with something tense and invisible. Guards flanked their path, but even among them, Daniel noticed shifting glances and tight grips on weapons. When they passed a high window, he caught sight of distant flashes in the skyships moving in patterns that did not look like peaceful patrols. "More trouble?" he asked quietly. Kaelen's jaw tightened. If they mean to test us, it will be tonight. They reached a side chamber where the matriarch awaited them. She stood beside a long table covered in tactical displays, her expression unreadable. The ceremony went as it should, she said, but the enemy will not rest. Reports confirm that a strike team has landed somewhere within the capital. Seris stepped forward. Then they will try to reach him, she said, tilting her head toward Daniel. Killing him before the bond is secure in the people's minds would shatter the law's authority. The matriarch's eyes narrowed. That is why you will not leave each other's sight. Before Daniel could speak, the lights flickered. A moment later, the sound of distant explosions rolled through the palace walls. Guards rushed in, speaking quickly in their language. Kaelen grabbed Daniel's arm. Move. They left the chamber at a run, following a narrow passage that bypassed the main corridors. The walls here were close, carved with old symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. Seris moved ahead, scanning each corner. The sounds of fighting grew louder. They reached a junction, just as a squad of armored intruders burst from the shadows. Their armor was darker, their weapons jagged and built for close combat. Without hesitation, Kaelen drew her blade, the Zalin, humming to life in her hand. Seris moved to the other side, her stance low and precise. Daniel's training from earlier days came back in flashes. He drew his own weapon, feeling its strange energy steady his grip. The first attacker lunged, and Daniel stepped aside, parrying the strike and slashing upward. The blade cut through the alien's armor with a flash of blue light. The corridor became a blur of movement. Kaelen's strikes fast and powerful, Seris's sharp and efficient. Daniel fought to keep up, his focus narrowed to the enemy in front of him. The intruders pressed hard, but the three of them fought as one, their movements almost instinctively coordinated. When the last enemy fell, the corridor was silent except for the sound of their breathing. They know this palace too well, Kaelen said, scanning the bodies. Someone on the inside guided them here. They moved again, this time toward the palace's secure chambers. The matriarch met them at a reinforced door, flanked by elite guards. Her gaze moved over them, noting the blood and marks on their armor. You have already been tested, she said. And you did not fail. Daniel lowered his weapon but kept it ready. This wasn't just a test. They meant to finish me before I could prove myself. The matriarch's eyes hardened. And now they know you can fight. The secure chamber was smaller than Daniel expected, its walls layered with defense shields. From here, the matriarch issued orders to the palace guard and city watch. Ships in the sky began to shift their formations, cutting off escape routes. Kaelen stood at one side of the room, sharpening her blade with slow, deliberate movements. Seris stayed near Daniel, her voice low. They will come again. They do not accept defeat easily. He looked at her, seeing the calm determination in her eyes. Then I'll be ready. Hours passed with no further attack. But the tension never faded. Finally, the matriarch called the three of them to stand before her. This law binds you now, she said. But the bond alone is not enough to hold this empire together. You must show them not just our people, but our enemies that you belong here. Daniel straightened. How? Her answer was simple. Tomorrow you will stand before the people as consort to my daughters. And you will stand with them on the training grounds before the warriors who doubt you. Kaelen's lips curved into a small, fierce smile. Let them see what you can do. Seris's hand brushed lightly against his arm, a silent signal of support. Daniel nodded. Then, let's make sure they remember it. As they prepared to leave the chamber, the matriarch's voice stopped them. One last thing, she said, her eyes locking on Daniel. You saved my daughters once, human. If you save them again when it matters most, you will have more than their hands. You will have the loyalty of a people who do not give it easily. Daniel met her gaze. Then I'll make sure it matters." Outside the secure chamber, the palace was still under heavy guard, and the scent of burned metal hung in the air. But for the first time since arriving in this world, Daniel felt something other than fear. He felt purpose. And if tomorrow was the chance to prove it, he would not waste it. The morning sun rose over the capital, its golden light glinting off the palace's tall spires. The training grounds stretched wide before the city walls, a massive arena where warriors tested their strength before the eyes of the people. Today, the stands were already packed. Soldiers, citizens, and council members gathered to see the human who had married the royal daughters by ancient law. Some came to witness his worth. Others came hoping to see him fail. Daniel stood at the edge of the grounds, Kaelen and Seris on either side. His ceremonial armor had been replaced with lighter combat gear, and the Zalin blade rested in his hand. Kaelen's voice was calm but firm. "They will come at you hard. Do not retreat. Make them see you belong here." Seris added quietly, "And remember, you do not fight alone." He nodded, breathing deeply, focusing on the moment. The Matriarch's voice rang out from the royal platform. "By our law, he stands as one of us. By his skill, he will prove it." The gates at the far end opened, and 3 armored challengers stepped onto the field. They were chosen from the Empire's elite, each one towering over Daniel, their weapons gleaming. The crowd roared in anticipation. The first warrior moved fast, swinging a massive axe in a wide arc. Daniel stepped aside, feeling the wind of the strike pass his face. He countered with a slash, the Zalin's blue light cutting deep into the alien's weapon arm. The warrior staggered but did not fall. The second challenger came in low, aiming for Daniel's legs, but Kaelen intercepted, her blade ringing against theirs in a sharp clash. The third charged toward Seris, only to be met with her precise and devastating strike that sent him to the ground. Daniel focused on his opponent, blocking a heavy downward strike before twisting to deliver a blow that knocked the axe from the warrior's hands. He stepped forward, pressing the advantage, and with a swift movement disarmed his opponent completely. The crowd erupted into cheers and shouts, some in surprise, others in reluctant respect. But the test wasn't over. A sharp sound cut through the air, a piercing whistle from the upper stands. Daniel glanced up to see shadowed figures moving among the spectators. Kaelen's expression hardened. "Not part of the match," she said. A heartbeat later, the shadows revealed themselves assassins, their armor dark and their weapons drawn. Chaos broke out as guards rushed to respond. Daniel didn't think. He ran toward the royal platform, Seris matching his pace while Kaelen stayed to fight in the arena. The assassins moved fast, leaping down from the stands toward the Matriarch. Daniel reached the platform just as one assassin raised a blade toward her. Without hesitation, he intercepted the strike, his Zalin meeting the attacker's weapon. With a flash of light, the impact rattled his arm, but he pushed forward, forcing the assassin back. Seris engaged the second attacker, her movements swift and controlled. The Matriarch remained calm, watching as Daniel fought with every ounce of focus he had. He sidestepped a thrust, hooked the assassin's leg, and brought him to the ground with a hard strike to the chest. The weapon clattered away, and Daniel held the blade at the attacker's throat until guards swarmed in to restrain him. The last of the assassins fled, vanishing into the chaos outside the arena. The crowd, which had been screaming in panic moments before, now watched in stunned silence. The Matriarch rose and stepped forward, her voice carrying over the field. "You saved my daughters once. Today, you saved me. No one can question your place among us now." Kaelen rejoined them, her armor marked with scratches but her stance strong. "The people saw," she said quietly. "They will remember." Seris smiled faintly, her eyes meeting Daniel's. "You were never just bound by the law. Now you are bound by choice." Daniel sheathed his blade, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. He had come here as an outsider, forced into a union he didn't understand. Now standing beside the sisters and under the matriarch's gaze, he realized something had changed. This was no longer about survival. It was about standing with them, not because the law demanded it, but because he chose it. The crowd began to chant, not the ceremonial words from the day before, but something louder, fiercer. It was the sound of acceptance. The matriarch turned to him and spoke low enough that only he could hear. From this day forward, you are not just their husband. You are a son of this empire. Daniel looked out at the faces in the stands, then at Kaelen and Seris. Then I'll fight for it, he said. The sisters exchanged a brief glance, both of them smiling, and for the first time since his arrival, the weight on his chest felt lighter. The war might still come, the enemies might still strike, but whatever happened, he would face it here, with them.